Good afternoon, Mountain View people. Good evening. Good morning. I don't know what time you're watching this once more, but hey ho, here we are. Today, I'm going to have a interview with Tis. Tis, if you'd like to introduce yourself and give us a little bit about what you do, etc.
Yeah, so hi, my name's Tis. I am, first and foremost, I'm a sound engineer. I run a recording studio called Radical Lounge in Ipswich. But I am also project coordinator for a program called the Rules of Engagement in Ipswich, which is a project which looks at the relationship between young non-English ethnic groups and local police. Our agenda is to build upon young people's understanding of their rights and human rights, but also to listen to young people to get their insight on areas of policing that could do with some improvement, for example. We're also looking for positive examples of relationships between young non-English ethnic groups within communities and their local police.
So I understand you have a social media platform for that. Do you want to give
We
that a
do
plug in?
indeed. Yeah, we do. So on Instagram and Facebook primarily, if you type in at ROE Ipswich, that's at ROE Ipswich, and you will find us. We've got a couple of videos on there just asking questions to young people about their experiences, about disproportional engagement, about their perceptions on policing in their own communities. So if anybody feels like they've got an experience that they would like to talk to us about, you can reach us on Facebook or Instagram, just DM us, and somebody will be there to pick up your message and take it from there.
Calm, calm. I'll make sure they put that in the credits in it, yeah. So like if you're listening, yeah, like Mr. Tech Guy, yeah, like that needs to go in the credits, yeah, because we need this. um, so can you like, that's quite a big job. Can you like let us know like what inspired or like encouraged you to get involved in this like area of expertise, I guess?
Um, well, I've got somewhat of a precarious background. When I was a young man growing up in London, I had my fair share of run-ins with the police, and most of the time it wasn't very pleasant. There were also times when um, certain police engagements were, I suppose, maybe too excessive, or the police got it wrong, and it came apparent that they got it wrong. But then I had been a victim of excessive use of force, so I kind of know what it feels like. But I've also had positive experiences with the police. As a grown man, I have friends who are police officers now, whereas as a young man, that was a myth. Um, so for me, I care much about young people. I care a lot about the mental health of young people. I also, where I work in a recording studio, we have a lot of young people that come to the studio, and they have a good old chat with us about what's going on in their lives and some of the experiences that they've had in their communities. And a lot of the time, it does end up being us talking about police. So I was approached by an organisation named ISCRI, which is an acronym for Ipswich and Suffolk Council for Racial Equality. That's Ipswich and Suffolk Council for Racial Equality. So they approached me with the concept and the funding, and asked me if I'd be interested in leading on the project. The project started before the lockdown. Our initial plan was to have a physical platform where we would have Q&A sessions, forums, and networking meetings for young people to engage with police in a way that is probably unnatural to them. But obviously with current affairs, we've had to completely change our strategy, and we focused most of our engagement, if not all of our engagement, via online platforms.
Wow, that's a lot. I mean, if we've kind of already touched on it, but I don't know if there's anything else you want to say further on. Do you mind telling us like anything about like your personal experiences with the police? How they dealt with you, how it made you feel, etc.
Well, like I said, I've had a mixture of types of engagement, positive and negative. More positive experiences being post 30, and kind of a lot more negative experience pre 30 years of age. So, I mean, there was one example where police acted quite excessive, but under the circumstances, based on the information that they had, it might not have been seen as excessive, but they were wrong. So a friend of mine was stabbed, and it was a fatal stabbing, and he passed away. A bunch of us, we went after the people who did it. We didn't catch up with them, but the police caught up with us, thinking that we were them. And where we had then got the news that our friend had been fatally wounded and was rushed into A&E, obviously tensions were high. You know, we were trying to articulate, probably not very well, but we were trying to explain to the police that there's a misunderstanding. We're not the people who have committed the crime. We're friends of the victim, but they wouldn't listen. So yeah, I refused to be arrested because they wouldn't listen to me. And by my refusal, you know, then they exerted their right to use force. So I had two officers holding me either arm, whilst one was hitting me in my stomach with a baton. And then after a few strikes, one of the officers said, "Look, just gas him." So then I was like, "No, please don't gas me." And I went down on my knees and said, "Look, don't gas me. Like, I'm gonna stop resisting." And he was like, "It's too late." And he continued to gas me. He actually emptied the whole can in my face. Yeah, they got me to the station, and they then, you know, told me that the person who had been stabbed had died, and that I was being charged with murder. So I said to them, "Look, do you know what? I'm not worried because my conscience is clear. You know, I'm gonna mourn as well as the family. You guys are not really listening to me. You haven't been listening to me. You beat me up and gassed me. Now you're telling me that you're charging me with murder." So I said, "Look, do you know what? I didn't do it." I said, "You know, forensics will tell the truth, so I'm not worried. Yeah, so if you can just put me in my cell, we'll be done with it." And then they took a trophy picture throwing up kind of West London gang signs for a bit of a laugh, because they thought they had, you know, they had secured a serious case. And then by the morning, they kind of came to my cell in the police station. A doctor came to look at me and said, "You know, what happened to you?" And I was like, "The police happened to me." And you know, half of my face had peeled off from where the acid had burnt my face.
The police burnt your face?
Yeah, the CS gas, it had literally burnt my skin off. So by the morning, all my skin had literally like a severe sunburn. And then yeah, the officers came. They said there was a misunderstanding, and having spoken to some of the family members, you know, they now know that what I was saying is true. So they apologized and said that they're going to release me, but not without charging me for assaulting a police officer and resisting arrest. At the time, I was quite young, so I didn't really know kind of what I was getting myself into legally and what kind of legal support I should have, but I was stubborn and angry. They offered me legal counsel. I turned it down. So obviously I was 18. So I turned the legal counsel down. So I had nobody representing me. And then they pretty much convinced me to plead guilty. So I pled guilty like an idiot. And yeah, that was that. So later in life, I've kind of tried to look into challenging that case and kind of bringing it back up and kind of, you know, fighting it. But the cost of trying to do that put me off. So, you know, I've spent the rest of my life having assaulting a police officer and resisting arrest on my license, on my record, you know. So, and I've also witnessed police use excessive force on friends and so forth, you know what I mean? So, but I suppose back then I was a different person. My mentality was different. So when police would engage with me, the way that I would deal with it or approach it is very different to the way I would now, being, you know, a mature adult.
Wow. Thank you. That was, I won't lie to you, that was quite heavy.
It's quite mild, actually.
Wow. Okay. In terms of yikes. In terms of can we talk about like statistics? Yeah.
Yeah. Can just hold that? Just give me 1 second. I'll be back. Give me 1 second.
That's what happens when you do an interview like at home. Statistics, yeah. I've got a few I've researched in terms of London, but I don't know if there are any you want to mention based on your particular area first.
I kind of looked at the UK nationally rather than kind of locally. I do have local statistics, but they're buried in my desktop somewhere. So I mean, what I've kind of found online is for stop and search specifically, between, what was it, 2018 and 2019, all persons, this is not including mobility stop and search or car vehicle stop and searches, it was looking at like close to 400,000.
Yes.
And then if we break it down into ethnicities, the Asian community was looking at about 41,000. The Black community was 70,500, or not 70.5, so 70.648. So yeah, we could round it up to 71,000. Mixed heritage was 13,000. It says white was 187,000. 155,000 of that was white British. So, but you have to keep in mind that there's a reason why people refer to certain ethnic groups as a minority. So although the number for the white community or the white population was higher, but there is quite a substantial difference between the population of certain ethnic groups and the English white population. Yeah. So if you was to break down those ratios, you would then find kind of the more detailed figures. So out of the Black community in the UK, so we're talking about England and Wales, 70,000. Black other, so I suppose that's non-African and non-Caribbean, so that could be Portuguese, that could be American, it could be Spanish, Brazilian, European, whatever, yeah. So the numbers were quite high, actually. It was 28,000 out of the 70,000. So, I mean, the numbers seem to have dropped from previous years. But, I mean, in my own community, without looking at statistics, but actually talking about real experiences, there's quite a lot of European ethnic groups who are feeling marginalized or targeted by local police. And I suppose because there's a massive difference culturally compared to some of the Black members of the British community who have been here longer than some of the Romanian members of the community. So, there's a lot of language barriers which also create tension. Plus certain non-English ethnic groups, they're culturally, the way their culture is, they thrive in numbers. They like to be in large numbers, and we know that obviously with a lot of the knife crime and the gang related issues we've had in the UK, large numbers of young people is deemed as somewhat to be a concern, for communities. So what I'm more concerned about is not necessarily the number of stop and searches, but how many of those stops and searches manifested into actual arrests.
Okay.
So in Suffolk, those numbers were quite disproportional. There was a high number of stop and searches, but quite a mediocre number of arrests. as a result of stop and searches, which tells you that more people are being stopped and searched than are being convicted or found to be doing something illegal during the stop and search, which begs the question, what are the motives or the incentives for a stop and search?
Glad you said that, because like that was actually my next question for you. I just want to know, like, why would the police officer want to stop searching the individual in the first place? Like, what would
I'm not a police officer, so I can't answer that question from experience. But if I kind of use my common sense, when you have high criminal activity in certain areas, the alert of police will be higher. It's easy to fit a description if it's dark and there's numbers and it's dark clothing. So if somebody's hanging around at night, or a group of people are hanging around at night, and pretty much most of them are wearing dark clothing, and someone says, you know what, there's a bunch of people hanging here, or this is an area known for drug dealing, police officers who are just patrolling are going to be on high alert. Yeah, because as far as they're concerned, it's a safe assumption that if somebody's hanging around in this area, it's likely it's going to be related to a certain type of crime. But these are specific areas. I mean, there's many areas where crime is extremely low, and you could be walking down the road and police would not stop you. But that's because actually the area, the locality, the culture of crime is very different. So in high populated areas where there are specific behaviors that are quite habitual in a certain area, police are going to be walking around with a preconception of what to expect when they're out and about, especially if they so happen to bump into one person who is probably walking by themselves, or got a hoodie up, or looks quite young, and is out late. There's going to be these assumptions. A lot of these are biases. For me, the issue is not necessarily a police officer stopping someone and asking them, are they okay? What are they up to? The issue is going into that with the preconception that somebody's already committed a crime. If somebody approaches me and says, do you know what, I'm a police officer, I'm just stopping you just to make sure that you're okay and just to see kind of what you're up to be honest. And I'll be like, well, I don't really want to talk to you about what I'm up to. First and foremost, when I take that approach, a police officer's suspicion is going to become more aroused. Why? Because I'm being defensive, right? If I've got nothing to hide, then I don't need to be defensive. And we can keep the conversation short and sweet if there's a little bit of respect coming from both parties. But there's a lot of young people who are not out committing crimes who still get very defensive. And a lot of that is based on experiences from other family members, friends, or what they see on social media, television, movies, etc. And in music, tensions are high because obviously we know that other countries, without saying specific names, have a high death rate when it comes to police and ethnic minority engagement. And although the death rate of people in the UK at the hands of the police is not as high as other countries, we're still affected by these things globally. So it's no wonder that a lot of young people walk around with a preconception of police or a fear of police, because of what they've experienced, what they've learned, and what they've grown to understand. So, I suppose first and foremost, police need to ensure a duty of care to the public, not just to the people who are obviously victimized, but the people who they're suspecting. You have a duty of care, not just for their physical well-being, but for their psychological well-being, unless you have, guaranteed evidence that they've committed a crime. But even if they've committed a crime, you still have a duty of care for the person that you're trying to apprehend. And young people, I suppose, need to take a different approach when it comes to police, in terms of attitude. If you haven't done anything wrong, a police officer's in their right to, to approach you, ask you a couple of questions. They don't necessarily need to keep you there for long periods of time, but you can have a short 3-4 minute conversation or less, and you can go your separate ways if your attitude is right.
Yes, yeah, that makes sense. Like I've heard a few instances of that myself, actually. Okay, with that in mind, I want to go back to something that you said earlier on. You spoke about how you spoke about how your experience with police officers was quite negative, like before 30, and then after 30 it's been a bit more positive.
Mhm.
I also had a look at a few statistics, and it says like on an average, out of 1,000 stop and searches, police will stop search 4 white people,
Mhm.
38 black people,
Mhm.
and 11 Asian people. So taking all that into account, do you think appearance plays a part in a stop search, like as well as
Yes,
ethnicity? Sorry.
yes, it does. Of course, it does. Again, we're going back to biases. The way you dress, the way you conduct yourself, police will assess whether they're going to approach you or not based on how you look. Especially if they've not been called to come and address you, but they suspect you. The way you look plays a part. I think we would like to say the color of your skin does not play a part, but statistics beg to differ. And again, we go back to some police officers who are biased in the way that they work, which needs addressing. So I feel that even though a police officer might approach you based on the way that you look, you're within your right to take information from that police officer, like their badge number and other details. They can even give you a slip to say that they've stopped you, right? And then you can take that to a local authority and you can actually say, do you know what? I feel like this stop and search was unlawful, or I felt like I was stopped because of my appearance, right? So, but a lot of young people wouldn't do this, and I don't know if police officers are responsible for educating the public that this is something that they're allowed to do. I've had certain police officers say that you can do this is an option, but only when I've asked the question. So it's, yeah, I mean, it's sad to say, but I personally feel that yes, there is a lot of bias, and you are likely to be stopped based on your appearance, based on how you look. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to treat you in a negative way, but it might be the reason why they approach you.
Boy, that's fun to stomach. I mean, you've once
So just
again.
I've,
Sorry.
as an adult living where I live,
Oh
I've
yeah,
had
30 last year.
I've had police drive past me many times and slow down, right?
Right,
But my demeanor,
right.
I suppose, once they kind of see my demeanor,
Hmm.
they then just drive off because
Right.
I don't act suspicious. I don't try to hide my face. I keep my head held high, and they then probably, they probably realize, well, he's not acting shady. We've obviously pulled up beside him because we thought maybe, but he's not acting shady. He's not panicked. He doesn't look like he's intimidated by us slowing down. And then they just pull off. They
Okay.
don't even wind down the window and say anything. They just kind of slow down, and then I kind of give them a look, and I act as though their presence isn't going to change my day or phase me. And then they tend to just drive away. So a lot of the time, you might be approached because of the way you look, but actually, the police might only engage you based on the way your demeanor is as a result of them approaching you,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
Does
Sorry,
that
if I
make
can
sense?
just, yeah, if I can wrap up what you're saying, just to clarify, you're saying that even though they may stop, they may like want be tempted to stop you based on appearance, body language
Yeah.
and composure is key. So I guess in your case, keeping your cool, they're less likely to like be what's the word, on guard.
Yeah, or less likely to get out of the car and waste my time.
fair. That's fair. Time is of the essence. That's what they say. Um, Sorry. Moving on. I just wanted to ask. You've started to answer this already. In terms of rights, what rights do both parties have in a stop search? The individual being stop searched as well as the officer.
Well, first and foremost, anybody who's being stopped and searched is not obliged to give their name. There's no law that states during a stop and search you have to give your name to a police officer. Nor do you have to allow the police officer to search you, especially if the grounds are not clear for the search. Yeah, because if that was the case, police could walk up to everybody and anybody and search them. Right.
Okay.
So a police officer has the right to stop you and approach you.
Okay.
But you have the right to ask why, and the officer then should really has a responsibility to give you a justifiable reason for why they're stopping you and searching you. What you may find is that stop and search situations can be provoked a little bit to justify the stop and search. This can happen in high tensed areas. So if a police officer will stop and search somebody, and even if that person isn't doing anything wrong, but if they have a bad attitude, then the police may also adopt an attitude which increases tension and results in maybe a public order offense, which wasn't the purpose for the stop and search. Yeah. So a lot of the time you may find somebody being stopped and searched, and because of the way they've responded to the stop and search, they've then committed an offense, either by swearing or being hostile. Yeah. So that can happen. You have a right to ask for the police officer's details. You have the right to ask for a stop and search slip to evidence that you've been stopped and searched. You also have the right to submit that slip back to the police with somewhat of a statement of your own to say whether or not you felt the stop and search was lawful. It's a tricky one. Even speaking to some police officers, they say the same thing. They say when it comes to rights around stop and search, it's a tricky one because there's not a lot of legislation or specific laws that govern stop and search. A lot of it is policy and procedure and guidance, which is not specific laws. There's guidelines that they're supposed to follow, and policies and procedures that they're supposed to follow. So it can be quite difficult, but you're not obliged to give up your name. When an officer stops and searches you. And an officer can't just stop you and say, we want to search you. They have to have grounds to do that.
Okay.
Yeah? Just like if they want to raid your house, for example, if they want to search your premises, they need to have a warrant. So they don't necessarily have a warrant to stop and search you, but they do need to have grounds. And if they don't have any grounds, it's an unlawful stop and search.
Oh, okay. So I guess, so hypothetically speaking, in scenario, I'm walking down the street, police officer sees me, he says he wants to stop search me, and he doesn't tell me why. I have every right to say, no, you haven't told me why, I can just continue with my journey?
Ideally, but that doesn't mean they're going to necessarily let you continue with their journey, because if they have a genuine assumption for concern, then they're going to do their job, and they're going to try and detain you and actually get you to cooperate with them, right?
Yikes.
But again, it doesn't have to get heated if people's attitudes are correct.
Okay.
Yeah? So an officer might stop you with either false information or misinformation, or they might stop you based on an assumption. But within minutes of talking to you, that assumption can be squashed. But if of course it can, because actually, if you're polite and you say, look, do you know what? I don't have anything on me. I'm not willing to be searched because I don't feel that you have solid grounds for searching me.
Mhm.
If you do want to search me, I'm not going to resist, but I will want to slip to say that I've been searched, and I am going to take it up with your superiors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So actually, I'm not going to refuse a search. If you want to search me, you can search me, but I'm going to take this up with your superiors because you stopped me based on reasons that are still absent to me because I'm not really understanding why you're stopping me. If you're saying that I fit a description, then is that justifiable cause for you to then actually search me? I mean, again, I got stopped in Suffolk by Suffolk police, and I was told that I match or I fit a description, and I said, well, can you give me the details of this description? I said,
Mhm.
before I even let you search me, what are the details of the description that you're talking about? And straight away, the officer started to look me up and down. I said, well, don't look me up and down and then tell me exactly what I'm wearing, because that doesn't make sense. I said, first and foremost, I know where I've come from. I've come from work. I said, I have people that can vouch for me. Yeah.
Mhm.
I said, I'm not going to allow you to stop and search me just because I fit a description,
Mhm.
but I'm happy to stand here and have a conversation with you to actually resolve this verbally. But I'm not about to allow you to physically engage me because I don't feel like you have justifiable cause. So
Wow.
then the officers started to get a little bit frustrated, as
Mhm.
did I. And I said, look, this is getting a bit ridiculous now. Like, I'm going to go into my house. If I'm not under arrest and you're not going to physically restrain me, I'm going to go into my house. So one of the officers positioned themselves behind me, not to physically restrain me, but just to kind of obstruct me, right, from going about my business. And then they called firearms police, and the firearms police turned up, and they didn't pull their weapons out, but they just approached me and said, kind of what's going on. And I said, look, officer, can I speak to you separate from your colleague for a minute? So I spoke to the officer and I said, this is the situation. This is what's going on. So the officer said to me, look, do you know what? I understand your frustration. You're in your right to get a stop and search slip off my colleague, and you're in your rights to make an inquiry about the stop and search, right? Or to put in a complaint about the stop and search. You're in your rights to do that. I said, okay, fine. I said, well, I'm still not going to allow you guys to search me because this is unlawful. He's saying that I match the description, but when I inquired as to kind of what is the description, where did this description come from, specifically what area are you talking about, because I've literally not stood still in any particular area. I've walked from work and I've gone home. So it's very unclear to me, kind of what part of the town you're referring to, that, where I was picked up, by, I don't know, whoever gave them that information. But, nonetheless, I wasn't satisfied with the responses they gave me. I refused to be searched. I said, if you want to search me, you're going to have to arrest me. They decided that they weren't going to arrest me. And I did take a slip, stop and search slip, and I did put in a complaint. So
Wow. Can I just say that's a tense situation to keep you cool if they're calling in like the firearm police? You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
that's for
I
many
didn't keep
people.
my
That's like
cool. I didn't keep my cool, but I didn't lose my right either. You know what I mean?
okay,
I felt like I felt like I had to defend myself because
okay,
I felt like I was being targeted. So I didn't keep my cool, but what I didn't do was cross the line either.
okay. So it's a fine line. It's a fine line.
There is a fine line, but I asserted myself.
Hmm. Okay.
I was assertive in defending myself.
Hmm.
Um, I was articulate in kind of defending myself as well.
Hmm.
And although I refused to allow them to search me, I didn't become hostile. I said, I don't agree with the stop and search. So if you stop and search me, you're either going to have to physically restrain me and stop and search me, or you're going to have to arrest me and stop and
Right.
search me. But I'm not going to give you my permission to search me, because that's what
Okay.
you're asking for, and I'm not giving it to you. So if you want to search me, you're going to have to do it after arresting me or by physically restraining me and searching me. And either way, I'm going to report you guys. So
Thanks.
yeah. And that kind of ended with me not getting searched. I did take the slip. I did put in a complaint. I did hear back from the police, and they said that they have a process for looking into these things, and it would be addressed. And that was it, really. But I didn't pursue it, to be honest. I didn't pursue it. I walked away without getting searched. I never had anything to hide anyway. It was the principle of the situation.
Amazing.
So.
No, thank you. No, thank you. That's actually mad insightful. You've kind of answered my next question, which was like, what's the best way a person can conduct themselves in a stock search? But
well, to be fair, the best way to conduct yourself is to remain calm, to be polite,
right,
and to know your rights. Know what you're entitled to. Know what your rights are. So yeah, and there's quite a few organizations up and down the country that are dedicated to teaching young people about their rights in terms of police engagement and about their human rights. One of the questions that I ask is, do you feel like our educational systems should take more responsibility for educating our youth and our young people and our young adults on their rights in terms of local policing and human rights? Should secondary schools be doing more to educate our children about their human rights? Many of the parents I speak to, the answer is yes. Many of the young people I speak to, they also say yes. So are the universities, colleges, and secondary schools of our society doing enough to ensure that our young population are very clued up about what their rights are? I mean, they could argue that parents have a responsibility, but not all parents are the best of teachers. You know what I mean? So
that's true. That's true.
And
that's why we go to school, isn't it?
Yeah, and we should be able to depend on our educational system to equip us and empower us for life, regardless of criminal justice, economic, social. You know what I mean? No matter what it is, we should be able to depend on our educational system to prepare us for the future. And that's not to kind of undermine the work that goes on at the moment and the educational system that we have in the UK at the moment. There's a lot of areas for improvement, but we don't want to undermine what they do already. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be highlighting areas for development. Society changes constantly. It never stays the same. So, a stagnant nation is a nation that isn't growing. You know what I mean? So we need to not be stagnant. We do need to listen to each other, learn from each other, and apply changes where an opportunity is there for us to see change and development, especially if it's positive change. So yeah, I would like to see educational systems doing more to inform our young people of what their rights are.
So is it fair to say, in your opinion, which I would agree with, is that stop search training should be compulsory for schools and universities?
I mean, it depends, really, because if you go to school in an area where stop and search is near enough non-existent, then you wouldn't necessarily teach about stop and search, but you should still be teaching people about their rights and human rights. You know what I mean? So I feel like you can't have a generic educational system that works for everybody, especially in a cosmopolitan society or a diverse society. In the UK, it has become such a diverse community. There are so many different cultures here that there needs to be adaptations in the way that we educate ourselves and the way that we educate our children that meet the cultural differences. So the way I might teach my son might be different from the way the way that I might talk to my friend's son who may be, have Chinese heritage, for example. Yeah. So I feel my role as a father is to be a teacher to my children. Yeah. Provider, protector, all of that, but fundamentally a teacher. You know what I mean? And I look at all children, all young people as my responsibility, not because I'm responsible for them, but when I engage with them, I therefore have a responsibility to, you know, make sure that I'm giving them the best of whatever I'm giving them. And it has to change, you know, like the way that I might discipline my son might be different to the way I might discipline my nephew or my niece. You know what I mean? Me and my son, we live in Suffolk. My niece and my nephew live in London. Just the two cities alone have substantial cultural differences. And I feel like this is what the educational establishment needs to take into consideration is actually, yes, we do need to improve the way that we educate our children in terms of their relationship with police and their human rights, but it can't be generic across the UK because loads of communities are unique.
Fairs. Nah, I like that. Next question was like, how should an individual expect to be treated, which kind of goes along the lines of rights. So you spoke about like mistreatment earlier on from police. So how would an ideal stop search go where both parties could potentially be happy? You know what I mean? Like, or satisfied in this.
Well, let me talk in two contexts, yeah? So of a person who hasn't done anything wrong and somebody who has committed a crime, yeah? So both of those people should be treated the same, yeah? It doesn't mean that the outcomes are going to be the same, right? It doesn't mean that the outcomes are going to be the same, right? But a police officer should approach any situation with de-escalation in mind. Yeah. So they should approach a situation with a mindset for treating somebody with the decency they deserve. If they have to get physical, it's a response to the situation escalating, right? Based on the civilian's behavior. But what shouldn't happen is a police officer stops someone who hasn't done anything wrong, and they have a polite conversation, and the person said, look, I haven't done anything wrong. And, you know, if the police officer says, well, what are you doing in this area? Well, I live in this area. I live around the corner. I'm going home. You know, does this conversation have to go on for much longer? Well, actually, you know, we've got information about such and such going on in this area. So we're just kind of just making sure that first and foremost, you're okay, you're safe. But most, you know, second of all, that, you know, you're not out here doing anything that you're not supposed to be doing. And then the person should be able to say, well, no, I'm not. And if the police officer says, well, you know, you know, if they get out of the car, then if they get out of the car, it means they're gonna come and engage you. They might want to stop you. They might want to search you. If they say, can we search you? Like I said, you're in your rights to say, you know what, I don't really want to give you my name. I don't have nothing to hide, but I'm not doing anything wrong. I've come from this place, I'm going to this place. That's about all the information I'm willing to give you. The police officer can then make a decision about how they want to take that forwards. Yeah, but what they shouldn't do is they shouldn't provoke you, right? And they should treat you with care, right? So they should take into consideration that they're doing a job and you're a civilian, but you're not an enemy of the police, and they shouldn't approach you in that nature. Now, it's the same with somebody who's been found to be doing something wrong. If they've been caught and they're not actually being hostile and aggressive, the police do not need to treat them inhumanely.
Which we see a lot of.
So I mean, in any situation, the best outcome for a stop and search is to first and foremost remain calm. Second of all, to be polite. And to be as clear as possible in whatever it is that you're trying to say, and don't allow yourself to kind of to fall into a tension with the police. You know what I mean? So you know, I know for a fact that police officers have this kind of thing where they will assess your attitude. The first thing they're going to do is assess your attitude. So if they're approaching you and straight away you're being hostile, rude, negative, aggressive, then the police officers are probably going to conduct themselves in somewhat of a hostile way in addressing you as an individual, right? Doesn't mean that they're going to get physical straight away, but if you're going to be rude, they're not going to tolerate it.
Okay.
And then they're going to use whatever means necessary to control the situation. And if you don't want to be controlled, it probably will end in you being arrested, right? But if you don't act out of control, so you don't start becoming hostile, you don't start using offensive language, you don't start making wild accusations, and you actually keep your calm, then the police officers have no reason to start using whatever measures that they have at their disposal to restrain the situation. So when somebody's being stopped, remain calm, be respectful, be polite, and then you can expect to receive the same. But if you're going to be hostile, verbally abusive and aggressive, then you could probably expect to receive some of the same in the way that you're being addressed. So, but yeah, like any situation, any civil servant has a duty of care to the public, even if the person is committing a crime, unless they're physically trying to harm you as an officer, you've got no reason to physically harm them or be abusive towards them, or in any shape or form, whether it's racially, whether it's physically, whether it's emotionally. You've got no reason to treat anybody like that. And most officers will tell you the same, to be honest.
Okay. I mean, that's it really. In terms of like any last thoughts, obviously your organization is Suffolk based.
But we're online, you know. So,
online, of course.
Yeah.
Do you have any local recommendations like relevant to London?
I do. Can you still hear me?
Possibly specifically South London? Yes.
I do. Hold on a second. Let me just... Right, so there's an organization called Why Stop.
Why Stop, yes.
Why Stop. And it is, their website is why-stop.org. A stop and search project by young people for young people. They have an app as well that you can download. And let me just see. So the aim of Why Stop is to give you the tools to interact with the police safely, equipping you with all the skills and knowledge you need to handle a stop and search. Instead of giving you too much information about the law and the police, it focuses on really practical information and tips to help you manage what is often a confusing and stressful encounter, ending in as quickly and confidently and smoothly as possible. And we call this a harm reduction approach. So Why Stop? So why-stop.org. And yeah, they're a London-based organization.
Get that in the credits as well.
Huh?
Well, I was just saying, we'll get that in the credits.
Yeah, indeed.
Cheers. Right. I mean, to be honest, it's been an insightful almost an hour, half an hour. I don't know. I've lost track of time. But yeah, thank you for your time. Really and truly. Do you have any final thoughts yourself?
I mean, we're all students, and we're all learning. And one of the things I know is your voice as a weapon is way more effective than your fists as a weapon. So if you want to fight against injustice, or you want to fight against disproportional engagement or racial abuse or racial bias, use your voices more than anything else. Platforms like Why Stop, platforms like Rules of Engagement, which is ROE Ipswich, and all platforms, and even opportunities like this are profound in us actually seeing the change that we want to see within our communities. So I plead with all young people, engage with us, engage with the organizations that are out here trying to educate you on your rights. There's nothing worse than being wrong and strong. It doesn't really accomplish much.
Acting as well.
Yeah. So know your rights, and if you don't know your rights, engage with us and let us teach you. But what we can't do, especially under current circumstances, is we can't necessarily come to you So we create these platforms online for you guys to be able to access from the comfort of your own home or from wherever you are. So yeah, we kind of just plead with you to engage with us, and let's work together to see the change.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Once again.
Pleasure.
Yeah. I've been Ntabiso J Bhebhe, aka NJ, Anti-Racism Officer of SU, interviewing Tis. Tis, thank you for your time. Yeah. Stay blessed, people.